is going on, RotoGrinders? Welcome back to the NFL Pick Six show. Very special show. Of course, this is Thanksgiving week. Happy Thanksgiving to y'all out there. Usual suspects. Well, I was going to say usual suspects are here. We have John Daigle on layaway. He should be joining us in the next 5, 10, 15 minutes, give or take. The show does not stop, Daigle. It's not all about you. It's fine. He's going to be good to go. He'll be here in about 10 or 15 minutes, give or take. We'll see. Rich Hribar, I got your name correct this week. My apologies for butchering it last week. I called you John Hribar, of course, from Sharp Football Analysis. Rich, I was reading your articles for free, your game-by-game breakdown, at least the Thanksgiving ones, which we're going to focus on at least at the top of the show. Back end of the show, we're going to talk about the main slate as far as Sunday. But yeah, tell the people where they can find it. I guess I just did.
Yeah. Sharpfootballanalysis.com. They've got the Thanksgiving days games unlocked, so you can kind of read all our deeper thoughts instead of the condensed version.
Are we contractually obligated? Like every time you do one of these shows on Thanksgiving week, everybody has to give out like a Thanksgiving take, like a Thanksgiving food take. Do you have one? Have you been firing one off throughout the week? Because I feel like there's an obligation of some sort. Everybody's got to say some kind of hot take when it comes to Thanksgiving, right? I feel like that's a thing. Am I just making that up?
I mean, I think people do. I mean, I don't really have any hot takes. I'm one of those people, like, I don't understand like the riff of like, if you like something, you like it. Like, it's not like liking food isn't really a choice, right? Like you taste it and you just chemically like it or not. Like, it's not like, so, I mean, sorry about your luck. If I like something, you don't, and vice versa, so be it. But I enjoy the holiday food. I mean, it's one of those things like, we've got families close. So when we used to go to like 2 or 3 places at a time, it would get like exorbitant where you're just like, I've ate the same thing at 3 different places. I just would like, where's like lasagna on Thanksgiving or something else, but where's taco Thanksgiving? But no, That's all good.
Fair enough. All right. So this is how it's going to go. We're going to talk about the 3 Thanksgiving games at the top. This slate is a little rough around the edges. We're going to break. Is that a nice way of putting it, I suppose? Can we
They're
stop
all
with
unique.
Detroit?
I mean, we always get the Lions. So, and listen, the Cowboys were like bad for a long period of time too. So it's not like we're just having fun Cowboys. I mean, last year Dak was out. So like they got boat raced last Thanksgiving. So the games are typically kind of, cattywampus, to say.
There it is.
So.
Smash the, I was trying to work it in and you beat me to it. Shout out to those watching last week. There you go.
But we take what we can. It's a fun slate every year, typically filled with bad players. I mean, listen, remember a couple years ago, we were playing Jesper Horsted and, things like that happen on these slates.
Is that like a tight end for the Bears?
Yeah.
That sound okay.
He caught a touchdown too. He played like 20 snaps or something and still caught a touchdown.
Of course. Speaking of the Bears are playing the Lions. That's the very first game to kick us off as far as the Thanksgiving slate. 41.5 is the total. The Lions are currently 3-point dogs. This feels like a loser leaves town. Like if the Matt Nagy, we didn't know if he's going to get fired before, after, sometime at halftime during this game. There's all sorts of rumors out there, and somehow they are favored in this game, despite the fact they're without their quarterback. Justin Fields, of course, not playing football on Thanksgiving. Andy Dalton's going to be starting. And last I saw, according to the old Twitter webs, we're going to get Goff. Goff is expected to go unless something goofy happens overnight. So there you have it. That's what we're starting. And, of course, Allen Robinson not available, or I don't know if he's officially ruled out, but considered doubtful at this point. We could talk about this game, of course, but in a broad sense, this slate, you're going to be rostering a quarterback, and these 2 are the more inferior quarterbacks in the slate, and it's pretty clear who the obvious ones, you're going to want Dak, you're going to want Josh Allen, but of course, everybody else realizes that too. If you got to pick one of these 2 quarterbacks, got to pick Andy Dalton or Jared Goff, right? You want to be a little bit different, right? That's how you're supposed to be, at least in these, especially in these like massive contests where the field is even smaller. Jared Goff, Andy Dalton. Choose your poison. Who's your preference?
Yeah, I mean, you can throw your thoughts on this too, because you are going to max enter a lot of things. I don't. I'm not a max entry player, not even on this slate. I'm going to go into these, small field, like almost sub 200 tournaments, over on FanDuel, and I'm just going to try to onslaught games and see if I can win that way, like I typically do. So, I mean, if you're throwing in 150 lineups and you're building these out, like you're going to have some stacks probably built out in this game, or other people will, if you don't necessarily have to. I think people will go to the Dalton side because of, one, Mooney, knowing who to stack him with. And then, kind of 2, the Lions side. That's like, we've been picking on the Lions all year. So, why not go to it? Dalton did complete his first pass over 15 air yards last week. So that was kind of nice to see. He did it
First of the season.
He was first of the season. When he's a small sample, he
Congratulations.
only started 2 games or whatever. But it's a bummer we're not getting Fields and a little bit Konami upside. I think he would have been a little more popular and kind of spread out some of the flattened ownership between Josh Allen and Dak a little bit. But I do think Dalton people probably go to that side. I mean, Detroit's 31st in yards allowed per pass attempt. They're 31st in yards allowed per completion. You can throw Mooney on the board with him, who had 49% target share last week. He only caught 5 of the 16 targets, but anytime you give that kind of large of a target share, people will be kind of on that player. And then you can even, I think you can play Marquise Goodwin too. Another guy who ran 77% route participation last week. He had a 50-yard touchdown, because on these slates he can get there like in one play, right? You can have like a 4-target Marquise Goodwin game and it still is a hit. So I do think the Dalton side will be a little more popular. I don't know how many people will get to Cole Kmet. His target share from Justin Fields is a lot higher than has been from Andy Dalton so far this season. He still hasn't scored a touchdown either. So I don't know how many people will get to Cole Kmet, but I do think Dalton will be the most popular quarterback of the two in this game.
Yeah, and the other thing is, just 6-game slate, is there's some pretty good tight ends as far as, considering just 6 teams out there with Waller, with Schultz, with Hawkinson. You mentioned Kmet. You got the Walter White, the one who knocks Dawson as well as lurking. Jimmy Graham's the next guy. Well, Juwan Johnson is somebody I want to pick your brain about. Maybe he's kind of sort of somewhat interesting as far as tournaments. When we talk about New Orleans soon enough, with Troutman being out there for a while. By the way, I don't make 100. I'm not somebody who max enders, to be clear. I'm usually like a 3-entry max guy or like a single entry contest, but you're probably thinking of when I talk about Yahoo, I will max enter that 150, that Sunday contest on Yahoo, because there's $200,000 in overlay. And then, then I'll rock it with 150. Otherwise I'm building like 8 or 10 or something like that. And I make my lineups mostly for, like yourself, smaller field stuff. Mm-hmm. So I don't have to be too goofy and too ambitious. I believe we have John Daigle with us as well. John, you're welcome to the show. Of course, John Daigle. Appreciate you joining us. You're here just in time to talk about, and I'm sure you haven't talked about it all day or at all throughout the week. You're here just in time to talk about Detroit Lions and Chicago Bears. So good timing.
Am I muted? No, I'm not. Okay. Well, I was just pouring a bottle of whiskey off screen, so I hope I didn't catch that. Nonetheless, we are here. Sorry for holding up for everybody, but we're ready to show up, talk about a Thanksgiving slate that I'm sure even the Swolecast has talked about every angle possible, but I think we can find something unique in this one. So I don't know what I just missed the last minute of recording. Nonetheless, we're here and ready to go. Yes. Lions, Bears, not exciting, but let's get to the slate.
Give me something unique or goofy in Lions Bears. Like we touched on the quarterbacks, Dalton and Goff, they kind of sort of are what they are. Montgomery is a nice matchup here in the dome against Detroit. Swift on the other side, and we saw Williams come back, so his usage dropped a little bit. But yeah, and like Mooney's going to be super popular. People are going to chase that, I assume, with Robinson being out. Nice matchup versus Detroit, and the price pretty, fine as well. But do you have anything goofy or off the board, or maybe just like don't play anybody here and wait, and hopefully it's like a 17-13 kind of game?
It's almost to your advantage to play someone here, honestly, because if you do, you have the information you need in ownership when you look at your lineup to then say, okay, then I can play someone from Cowboys, the most rostered team, we assume, on this slate, or hold out later for late swaps with both Mark Ingram, Tony Jones, or Matt Breida, assuming Zach Moss gets healthy scratched. So like, I do actually want to play someone where I've come down to in my single entry lineups, like mid high stakes, is like starting out with TJ Hawkinson, because it seems like everyone hates TJ Hawkinson, even though before Tim Boyle was available, the target share was still there. He was just fine. It's just the fact that Tim Boyle, on the passes he threw over 5 yards downfield, only 1 of 8 were accurate. PFF charted the rest inaccurate because he's Tim Boyle. Like he threw 26 interceptions in the last year of college. We didn't expect anything less from him. So I'm actually fine with starting in a way to combat DeAndre Swift, TJ Hawkinson, and then opening my lineups up to flexing 2 tight ends or late swapping later on. We've also seen the Lions offense the past 2 games with Dan Campbell taking over play calling for Anthony Lynn, that they've been even more run heavy than before. Beforehand, they were at a 45% run play rate. And then now their last 2 games have been at 43%. It's literally a top 4 run play rate in 1 score game script in the entire league. Even in that overtime game with the Steelers, recall, they called 39 carries to 25 passes overall. The issue is now Jamal Williams probably sees an increase in snaps. He played 27% of snaps this past week, but beforehand was at 35% in his first 7 games. So maybe we see a little bit of increase, maybe taking more touches away from DeAndre Swift. But if you play DeAndre Swift in the slate, you're playing for the catches clearly and hoping no other running back gets to their floor or ceiling, because like it is a slate, honestly, where running backs, maybe all of them fail. All of these games are bad. Every team lost last week. Every total has dipped under. The Cowboys team total has held strong at 29 points, but every total overall has just dipped because it's all bad teams. So I'm kind of in right now on playing TJ Hawkinson over DeAndre Swift to start the day.
Taking a peek at our ownership here, DK specific, as far as this game only, 65% for Montgomery, 53% for Swift. Pretty big numbers. Like you said, as far as the running back, it's not too strong. It'll get interesting as far as the New Orleans game. If we get news on Ingram, or when we get news as far as Ingram, and you talk about Moss as well too. And yeah, go ahead. You want to complete your thought?
Well, if you play any of the receivers, like everyone knows by now, probably Josh Reynolds led the team in routes run. But we've also seen Khalif Raymond has had the most success with Jared Goff. So maybe like rapport matters than routes run from last week with Tim Boyle. But if you play any of the receivers outside of Darnell Mooney, I think you're naturally contrarian and will have at least a better idea of what ownership is doing on the day. Also, we know in the very last game, you can slot yourself, get ready for Mark Ingram, and then late swap to Tony Jones. Whereas if you slot yourself with Tony Jones and don't leave salary, you can't even get up to like Matt Breida if Zach Moss is healthy scratched. So you just have to prepare for these things accordingly.
I want to save that question. Now I'm curious if Moss is healthy scratched, and if Ingram is scratched, I wonder who you prefer. Because it sounds like
the answer is probably neither, but we have to play one. So
no, Daigle brings up a good point. I mean, this is on a typical slate, like you would treat it like, people. This is where you take like your one-offs, right? Your one-offs early, because if you get your hits, then you've got kind of house money and you know what you're working with. Or if you miss your one-offs, whether it be Marquise Goodwin or Josh Reynolds or Khalif Raymond or whoever else, Jamal Williams, if you're chasing a touchdown and you hit, then you've got, all the information that you need to know. So, I mean, I like taking the swings on the randos early in the early game, not really getting a lot of ownership. Sometimes people are sitting down and this is like the game that they get to watch. So they'll go over on it for no good reason. And we'll get a little bit of lay of the land in this game, but I don't mind kind of, just, this is where you take your cheapy dart throws.
Who's your favorite wild swing in this game?
I would say Goodwin is my favorite, just because he can get there on one go, like one target he can get there. But I don't mind Reynolds, even Raymond as a deep throw, like Daigle said, and I like Hawkinson a lot as well, because I don't think anyone's going to really play him. A lot of people are going to want to wait on Schultz and Waller, and then if it doesn't hit, they can go to Knox still later. I think Hawkinson might come in a little bit lighter than he should be on a slate like this.
This is the take that ends me, but I feel like you can't play Waller in tournaments, right? Like he's the most roster player tied at a onesie position, arguably on the slate. And so like, unless you figure out a way to flex him or use him in the tight end spot and then he hits and then you use Dawson Knox in your flex later, or Juwan Johnson, I just feel like you're wasting your time. Like you can't win a tournament if you play Darren Waller. Again, that's a bad take.
You can play 2 tight ends though. Like you said, you got to talk about flexing them. And
yeah.
I think it'll be flatter on FanDuel than DraftKings. I think DraftKings, Waller's going to have a pretty significant gap in terms of ownership than he will on FanDuel.
But Daigle, you kind of referenced it. I think it's worth talking about. If you do hit your wild swing and let's say you play Goodwin and somehow Goodwin's at 12% or something like that, and he smashes, he catches 2 long ones, he gets loose. The rest of your lineup, like you probably shouldn't have Trevor Siemian. Like you've already got well ahead of the field. Like there's no reason to do that. Like you have Trevor Siemian if you miss your couple wild swings, then hopefully you cross your fingers. Like if you finish the 50th percentile or dead last, what's the difference? Who cares? Like if you have Dak or you have Allen with 3 misses in front of them, you're not going to, guess what? You're not going to catch up with those guys because everybody else already has those guys with some players that do well in the first game or the second game. So like elaborate on that thought, Daigle, because that's kind of my thought process too. And I think that's very important to say because just the way the slate's laid out, one game, wait, and you adjust accordingly based upon how your lineups have done so far.
We just already know who's going to be played from the early slate. We know David Montgomery, in order, by the way. David Montgomery, DeAndre Swift, and Darnell Mooney will be played in this game. No one was to play TJ Hawkinson and DFS, let alone redraft. No one was to play TJ Hawkinson this week because they just think, like, despite his elite usage, the fact he got one target from TJ Boyle, like, matters. It doesn't matter. Jared Goff is back now. I understand he's not the player or the tight end you drafted in the 3rd or 4th round. That's okay. It's a terrible, I almost cussed. It's a terrible position. I've been drinking clearly. So just keep playing the elite usage tight end. Hope he gets there with a tight end, because if you get with a touchdown, if you get 12 to 15 points from TJ Hawkinson, like, then you are severely, like, more comfortable not playing Darren Waller, because we know Darren Waller is going to come in at 60% ownership. And so the more players you play from this game, the more ownership, like, you'll have knowledge based to then make your decisions elsewhere. I'm genuinely trying to play this game. I'm assuming CeeDee Lamb is going to play. And so I am genuinely trying to get on this game as if I'm preparing for Mark Ingram to be ruled out eventually, because no one, maybe some people, maybe not a minority of the field will have Mark Ingram slotted in, and thus it's an easy late swap to Tony Jones. But no one's really going to be prepared to, like, have Tony Jones have 800 excess salary on DraftKings and then late swap to Matt Breida if Zach Moss is also healthy scratch. So I'm kind of just preparing for that late game, honestly, to be my dividend, to be my, like, one divider from the rest of the field. And by the way, I think everyone has a choice right now between Marquise Goodwin and Cedric Wilson. Cedric Wilson is the better cash play, knowing he's going to be in the slot, even if CeeDee Lamb's available. But that obviously makes Marquise Goodwin the better tournament play.
All right, we'll talk about that Raiders Cowboys game in just a second. Hribar, give me this. Give me the final score in this game. Does Detroit win? Do they win their first game of the year? And who is the Bears coach in 10 days?
No, I'm not going to pick the Lions to win. I mean, people did this last time. Remember when Detroit played the Bears earlier in the season, when Fields made that first start ever, or second start after he looked terrible against the Browns? Everyone was picking the Lions, and they weren't even in the game. They weren't even in the game against the Bears. So I definitely ain't going to pick them here. Could they win? I wouldn't, like, really blink. They've been in a couple games, but I'm not going to pick them. I mean, the Bears are what, 7-1. They're past 8 to the under. Detroit really can't score. Their games have been going under. Their defense has actually been kind of game recently. I mean, they faced Mason Rudolph and Baker Mayfield. Maybe that doesn't count, but they've been kind of game. They haven't just getting dog walked. So I don't know. I would lean towards, even with this as bad as it is, going under still. Yeah, it's rough. I still say, I don't know if Nagy's really fired. I don't know what to buy in that, but it doesn't matter. Does it really matter?
No, it doesn't get. I was just. It matters nothing for our purposes.
Doesn't it matter towards ownership though? Because, like, don't people actually believe, like, that matters? Now, this is a 3-game slate, so I may be, like, galaxy braining this, but I assume that because everyone believes Matt Nagy will be fired, thus they're going to play, like, DeAndre Swift and Lions defense. So I kind of think Bears defense is a sneaky play here, especially if you're playing David Montgomery.
Hey, what's
they're really expensive. Lions? I don't like to play. I'm definitely not really in on playing a defense early. I definitely don't want that money tied up. But Bears are a lot cheaper on DraftKings than they are FanDuel. I think they're the most expensive defense on FanDuel, and then they're like 3rd or 4th on DraftKings.
Yes, they're only 2,600, I believe, on DraftKings. So Lions are 2,400 as well. So.
These are projected to be the 2 most heavily owned running backs. And again, it might change if Ingram news comes out early, if Moss news comes out at some point as well, as you're speculating. You can only pick one. You pick one between Montgomery or Swift. Daigle, who do you prefer?
Oh, man. We've seen David Montgomery the last 2 weeks have 30 of 35 backfield touches, very clearly healthy. I think I take Montgomery just because I think the field gets more on Swift. But even though we need the knowledge, we really need that information. Even though you're, like, subscribed somewhere, you probably have information from tournaments. Like, honestly, I'd rather just, like, wait it out and just play those flexes elsewhere at running back.
We got Montgomery currently 65% on FanDuel, 41% for Swift on FanDuel. DK Montgomery 65 and Swift at 53. This stuff might change, of course.
To be fair, like, this is what I did. I've been somewhat good at navigating and predicting ownership, and like it actually matters this year. And let's say some people, you should subscribe to RotoGrinders, by the way, but if you don't, you can just try and project for ceiling projections for players, and it makes you a better tournament player. But the issue is I've been slightly off this year. Like, had I known Devontae Adams last week would have come in 30% less roster than Tyreek Hill, I would have played Devontae Adams 12 out of 10 times. I didn't know, though, everyone was just going to play Tyreek Hill. So I made that mistake. I think it was like 14% compared to Tyreek Hill was like 48%, which is wild. So little things like that actually cost you tournament wins, in my opinion. So yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I didn't know that number.
Yeah, and again, this stuff is fluid and like stuff. I don't even know if it's baking in. Like again, things will change if Ingram doesn't play. The Buffalo.
Everyone's drunk, but their high school girlfriends trying to get banged. Like nothing's changing. They're fine.
I see Josh in the chat. What up, chat? Hit the like button, subscribe, turn on notifications, all that good stuff. He says like $1 million up top. You have to take a chance this week, Hribar, and that's like me and you. Like I'm not playing for the million. I don't play those guys. I mean, it's cool, and if you want to do that, go for it. I like the more flat payout. I don't want to compete with a billion other people. And I think it's great that it's out there, and it's great that someone can become a millionaire or chop it with 100 of their best friends, depending on how goofy the winner becomes. But I do want to ask you about Reynolds. What does it say about Detroit's receiving core? He all of a sudden vaulted to the top right off the streets. He is 3K on DK. How viable is that? And the other part of that is my brain goes, we're not spending. Is Cooper Kupp on this slate? Is CMC on this slate? Like, who is he getting me? Is kind of my, is 12 points or 9 points, whatever it may be. What does that get me when he saves me some salary? Because there's not like a lot of guys are looking at, man, I got to have so-and-so. I can't imagine making a lineup without this really expensive player. Just lineup construction. Like Reynolds, I don't know what to do with him.
I mean, it's just if you want to get different, it depends if like what field size you're playing in, right? Like, on how different you need to get. I mean, if you're playing in small field stuff, you don't have to play any of those guys. You don't have to. I mean, you can try to onslaught a game. You can wait till later. You can play just the best plays depending on the field size. If you're in like, something like the Millie, or if you're max entering stuff, I mean, you're going to try to get you're going to have to try to throw like some unique kind of lottery ticket type stuff at the wall that you always have to win that stuff. It's going to be a whole totally different score that what wins those tournaments than what wins like some of the stuff that like I'm entering or what you're entering. So I mean, on DraftKings, I think that it's pretty open. I actually think it's tighter on FanDuel building lineups than it is on DraftKings. And, we get a couple like Tony Jones later could change everything. But like I said, Waller is like easier to play, I think, on DraftKings. I think that's why there'll be a clear divide like in his ownership on both sites. Reynolds does free up a lot of things on FanDuel, but you definitely you might not need that on DraftKings. You get the shower narrative, him and Goff, playing with the Rams. But I mean, wasn't Goff threw for 300 yards when these teams played earlier in the year? Like, I mean, it's not like he was just like a bomb either. Like he was capable of having production back then. I don't know how sticky that BVP will be on Thanksgiving, but he did throw for 299 when these teams played earlier in the year. So it's like no yardage.
If you want some more BVP, as you know, Dave Montgomery also had his best game of the year against the Lions with 100 yards and 2 touchdowns earlier. So, let's BVP. Dean, this is your
shout out to the BVP talk. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to be in the BVP streets, to be honest. Like it's such people are so dug in on it. Oh, it's a ridiculous conversation to have.
I mean, everyone, the Lions have just been bleeding out points to running backs literally the whole year. It's like Darrell Henderson was the only guy that didn't get there against them, and he was playing like him.
I'm not even like I'm not an MME guy like Dean, but the Detroit's defense ranked next to last in pressure rate with a league high 31 points per game allowed prior to being served Mason Rudolph and Baker Mayfield on a silver platter the past 2 games. So like their defense hasn't improved at all. They just played 2 terrible quarterbacks the past 2 weeks. So like if Andy Dalton is successful, now he showed up and completed 47% of his passes in the second half. So maybe he's not successful, but like there's a reason to believe like maybe Darnell Mooney and David Montgomery can both get there together. Sure.
In the chat, Spokowski says, bro, everybody has BVP versus the Lions. Yeah, that's a OVL, offense versus Lions. You got to reference this, Hribar, and there was a question in chat when I want to sort of tie in here. Because you were talking about speculating on an onslaught, right? Let's move on to the Raiders and the Cowboys. Cowboys are favored by 7 points. We're presuming CeeDee Lamb's going to play, not official just yet. That's the presumption. We'll know an hour and a half before kickoff. As far as actives and inactives, they have the biggest team total on the board at 29 and a hook. Is this one of the teams you are considering onslaughting, the Cowboys?
Yes, I think if you're playing this game in small field stuff, I mean, the way to get unique is to play everybody. Like really kind of just in hope the game gets there, right? Otherwise, you just kind of come off of it and you try to, I mean, that's like the stuff I'm in. Like, I want to have as much stuff. I want to know if I'm winning the money or not winning the money, basically. So, I mean, the way you get unique in this game is to not just like play Dak and Gallup or Dak, Gallup and Waller. Like you play Dak, Lamb, Zeke, see if you can fit Waller in. Maybe run a double with Schultz. You play Josh Jacobs. You play all the guys and you hope that this is the game that just goes bonkers and the other games are kind of a drag. That's how you get kind of unique. Everyone's going to be the highest owned guys in terms of projections are basically in this game. I mean, Zeke's looking like the RB2, Dak's the QB2. You got Lamb and Gallup as the top two, like projected on wide receivers. And then at tight end, you've got, Waller and Schultz right there in the top three as well. So I think really the only way to kind of get unique is to onslaught it because it's all going to be spread out anyways. But there's a way this game fails, and that's if the Raiders are completely terrible again, like they've been since the bye week. And I hate to blame something just on losing, Henry Ruggs, but losing that vertical component of the offense has just sank them. I mean, you look at where Derek Carr was heading into the bye and where he's come out of the bye. His ADOT's dropped almost 3 full yards. They've scored on just 9 of 31 possessions since the bye. It's 29%. It's 26th in the NFL. It was 13th prior to that at 44%. If they can't pass protect, it's a problem. The offensive line, hey, who knew getting rid of 4/5 year offensive line in the offseason was probably going to be a problem at some point this year. The problem with the Raiders too is they can't run. They can't do anything to combat. They're 28th in the NFL in EPA running the ball. Josh Jacobs hasn't had one game where he's had 100 total yards or more yet this season. So, I mean, it's tough. If this offense is just bad and as bad as it's been the last 3 weeks, the Cowboys will absolutely just run the lights out of this game.
Do we feel okay about Zeke's knee? I know he's supposed to be good to go, but like I just seeing him him around, and I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are saying consider playing Pollard. Zeke, is a little banged up, and if this game is out of hand, they probably go to Pollard a little bit more, or maybe playing both in an onslaught, like just play both running backs. I don't think that's completely nuts. Just maybe Dak doesn't throw for any touchdowns like last week. Did he throw for any touchdowns last week? I feel like he didn't. Maybe he threw for one. Doesn't matter.
He didn't score a touchdown.
Yeah. Okay. So it was 0. I know I had plenty of Zach and plenty of Mahomes, and that game was a wet fart for sure. What do you have for me as far as am I being paranoid about Elliott, or you're fine with him as far as whatever is up with his knee?
No,
I know who you're asking. Yeah, go for
it. I'll take it. Because Rich, you're so smart that like you look 2 levels deeper. Like you're literally Inception compared to the rest of us mere mortals. Whereas we're just trying to look at everything else. So like when we see that Henry Ruggs splits like matter because Derek Carr literally can't throw anywhere else. Like Zay Jones and Bryan Edwards in 3 games have combined for 6 catches for 150 yards. It's probably like pretty clear it's just because they don't have Henry Ruggs, but like you're so advanced that you say, no, it actually goes beyond that. Like it's probably because they don't have Henry Ruggs and also because like they changed their play calling, which like I don't think is wrong at all. I just think you're just the smartest person in the whole fucking industry. I don't cuss either. I just drink a lot. So I'm just saying that, yeah, you're totally right. But nonetheless, I think what everyone's going to do, because I've heard enough square takes now. I've listened to a lot of shows from a lot of my friends. And
you've been podcasting for 7 hours in a row, I think.
Did I just give a square take? Was that a square take saying Pollard? That was a square take. You could
no, it's not necessarily a square take. Dean, you're smart as well. But I think I've heard enough people say that Pollard is the better play over Zeke for this slate that I think Zeke is actually, this is very Mike Williams to Keenan Allen, right? Like Mike Williams is not the better tournament play if Keenan Allen comes in under rostered. And that's what it seems like with Zeke. No one wants to pay up for Zeke anymore. Thus, Zeke is the better play. And that's where I lean right now, especially because we've seen Graham Barfield of fantasypoints.com had a tweet earlier this week that the Cowboys averaged over 5 yards per carry, 5.3 yards per carry in 7 games with Tyron Smith this year. Significantly less impactful whenever Tyron Smith is not on the field in the last 3 games. So overall, like I think Tyron Smith matters. And if CeeDee Lamb has a concussion, like even lingering injuries, Amari Cooper clearly not out there, then maybe they just run the ball anyway. So where I lean right now, not only Tony Pollard, but you should probably get on both. Let's just play Zeke and Pollard together and say, this is a 3-game slate. This is something Eric Crane would do, by the way. This is RIP in memory of Eric Crane.
Well, he's still with us. He's still around.
Maybe, we don't know. But we don't know. Zeke, Pollard, screw it. Let's run them both together, plus the Cowboys defense, and let's say goodbye to the rest of the field. That's where I kind of lean right now, because I think Pollard is such a popular play that playing him like single-handedly is not going to be unique enough for tournaments, honestly.
Hey, if you're playing Zeke with Pollard, are you pairing that with the Dolphins defense? The Dolphins, the Cowboys.
Who's been drinking here?
Not me, man. Daigle, do you like pairing the Cowboys defense with Zeke and Pollard?
Yeah, I think it's fine. I also think, though, there are two sides to the Derek Carr story. Derek Carr's averaged 10.5 yards per attempt against man coverage this year. And that type of scheme the Cowboys have run at a top 3 rate in the league. But also we've seen, like Rich mentioned, that the Raiders literally have nowhere to go without Henry Ruggs. Since week 7, so since their week 8 bye, Carr is 24th in rate of his throws, 20 plus yards downfield, completing 4 of 10 set of attempts. So they just genuinely have nowhere to go. So if they increase their rate of passes to Deshaun Jackson, who could get open more than Zay Jones, who has led the team in routes run the last 3 weeks, or Brian Edwards, then maybe so. But even Deshaun Jackson, I think he's a fine tournament play. But otherwise, like, you're just not looking at the Raiders passing game outside of Renfro and Waller. Waller clearly the higher floor.
Well, somebody in chat just asked about Brian Edwards. I think he's given a couple goose eggs. Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go.
Well, see, here's the thing. We've been inundated, right? We know targets are earned. The ball goes to your best players, right? Like, that's what we know. And right now, the Raiders' 2 best offensive players are Darren Waller and Hunter Renfro. And that's where the ball's at. There's nowhere else for the ball to go. They're like, Zay Jones can run 50 yards downfield. It doesn't matter. The ball's not going to Brian Edwards can't get open on anyone except for linebackers. So, I mean, like, that touchdown he caught 2 weeks ago against the Chiefs was on a linebacker. Like, he can't get away from NFL defensive backs. So, I mean, he can't get open. The ball doesn't go to him. I did see Dwayne McFarland tweeted out a nice nugget that, because Deshaun Jackson only played 16 snaps last week. I mean, he's just, at his age, he's going to be a part-time player. He's going to be a package player. That's what he wants with the Rams. That's basically what he's going to get the Raiders. But 40% of Darren Waller's yards came with Deshaun Jackson on the field, just because he's pulling people in his direction, right? He's opening stuff up. So they need Deshaun Jackson at least to get out there and pull the defense away for guys like Renfro and Waller, open up those targets for them. To give them some kind of some windows, because Zay Jones isn't doing it, Brian Edwards isn't doing it. But we know the ball goes to your best players and who you have available. And right now, the Raiders' best offensive players in the passing game are Hunter Renfro and Darren Waller, guys that operate and accrue targets, in the intermediate levels and shallow to the line of scrimmage. And that's what's happened to this offense. Why the ADOT has dropped. People think it's a quarterback set. It's not. We know that. We've got quantitative proof that shows it's a receiver stat. So this is what's happened to the Raiders. We need Djax to come out and at least get some wind sprints in to free up some stuff for Renfro and Waller and open it up.
Hribar, you got to pick somebody to run it back in. You're not picking a flat out onslaught. You want to run it back with one guy on the Raiders. I assume it's Waller.
Yeah, I mean, if salary's not an object, I can fit in. Of course, it's Waller. Like I said, I mean, obviously he's going to be keyed in on by the defense, but Dallas doesn't really have great safety play or great coverage linebackers, which is why they rush so much. This is why they play a lot of man coverage. They're aggressive. Those guys aren't really coverage guys, and that's why tight ends have given them trouble. The entire season. I mean, they're 26th in catch rate out of the tight ends, 29th in yards per target out of the position. Tight ends have actually scored 21% of the points allowed by the Cowboys, which is the 8th highest rate in the NFL. So if you have that choice, plus Renfro is a guy that, like, he's got to get into the box. His price on FanDuel is ludicrous because he hasn't even gone over 58 yards in any of his past 7 games. His season high is 77 yards. So he's got to get a touchdown to get there on that site. And that's kind of a problem you have with Pollard too, right? Pollard has 1 touch inside the 10 this season. Like, he can easily come out and have like 6.5, 7 yards per touch. But if he doesn't score a touchdown, like, what are we getting on a slate like this?
Not the problem I have, buddy. Not the problem I have. It's the problem the field has, because they're going to play Pollard this week. I know for a fact.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen the takes. I mean, well, I think when you look at the way the Raiders play defense, right? They don't blitz at all. They're the lowest blitzing team in the NFL. They rely on Ngakoue and Max Crosby at home. They're going to play a lot of cover 3. They're going to play a lot of shell coverage, like the buzzword is. But they force you. They're number 1 in the NFL against the deep ball. They've got a 25% completion rate on throws 15 yards or further downfield. You've got the Cowboys. We know if Lamb's going to be 100% and be a go. Like, this is a game that's set up to like when the Cowboys played the Eagles on Monday night earlier in the season, where Dak can literally probably just pepper like the short, shallow targets, go like 24 of 29 passing for like 240, and you hope the touchdowns come with the efficiency, because that's the type of defense the Raiders play, right? They're not an aggressive man-to-man defense. They just don't have the personnel to do it. Like, Casey Hayward's been good, and then the rest of their guys aren't good at all. So it's probably one of those games you're going to see a lot of zone coverage. It's probably why Dalton Schultz is a good play, and that's why tight ends inherently have high numbers against the Raiders anyways, because it's the type of defense they play. We talked a lot, like, defensive scheme has gotten more on the forefront of everyone's fingertips this year, but like teams like the Chargers, the Eagles, the Raiders, there's a reason why tight ends crush them every week. It's because the defense is designed to allow those throws to be completed to running backs and tight ends and allow teams to come up and make tackles. That's why the Raiders give a lot to tight ends. So, I mean, I could see definitely this game playing out in a way where like Dak's just really hyper efficient. And if the Raiders are as bad as they've been the last 3 weeks coming out of the bye, Dallas can kind of just cruise and play this 2-pronged running back system and kind of just like go down the field and eat clock and do what they want, the rest of the afternoon.
That's why I still like Elliott and Pollard together. I think it's a unique way to get exposure to both of them, since everyone wants to play Pollard and then skip on the salary, $8K on DraftKings in particular, that is Elliott. Also, yeah, it's Waller's just fine, but again, I think you need another tight end in the flex to be unique to that exposure, because everyone's going to play Waller. Everyone
play Elliott, Pollard, Schultz, and Waller. There you go.
Schultz is such an awesome play. So like the Raiders leave the middle of the field open, and everyone's going to play Michael Gallup most likely over CeeDee Lamb and over Schultz. Like, Schultz is a great play, especially as a flex option. Great play.
Daigle, forget game theory, forget salaries, lineup construction, all that kind of stuff. Who is your favorite? Like, who's the Cowboy most likely to break the slate?
It's got to be Zeke. It's got to be Zeke's 60 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's what it's got to be. Because this is the thing. This is such a floor slate. Like, here, the possibility that no one does anything is it's much greater than the chance anyone breaks the slate, and thus the floor play will break the slate. And Zeke, like, is going to get all the carries into the 5. Like, Tony Pollard is not an issue. Tony Pollard has scored 1 touchdown. We are not worried about Tony Pollard. The only reason we're even talking about him is the fact that everyone wants to now suddenly play him because they're off on a holiday and they're eating family and talking politics with like their parents. They don't want to do that shit. They'd rather play Tony Pollard. So no, like,
I would much rather play Josh Jacobs than Tony Pollard for sure.
And I thought you were going to say talk politics with parents, but
I'm not even kidding. Like,
with that too.
Jacob's floor may break the slate. Like, Jacob, 5 catches for 16 yards may break the slate.
I mean, on DraftKings, they're basically the same salary. Jacobs is 5'9" and Pollard's 5'6". Jacobs has 14 catches the last 3 games, 5 in the last 2.
Cards,
he's getting 70% of the backfield touches. And we know if there's like a pass interference or someone gets tackled at the 1-yard line, like, he's going to get the carry, right? Like, we know it's going to be him. Yeah. So, I mean, he could be totally a guy on this slate that has maybe only, 80 total yards, but could have like 1 to 2 touchdowns.
Pollard comes in over rostered compared to him, right?
Oh, let me see. Look at projections.
That's Pollard versus Jacobs.
I know projections, but I'm guessing that
not on DraftKings.
I'm guessing Pollard is going to be more rostered than Jacobs. Honestly,
we got Pollard right now at 10% for the record. So maybe we're just in a bubble. Oh. Maybe, I mean, I don't know if that's right or that's wrong. And again, this stuff will change, especially as news, comes piling in. And it might be lower when people are waiting on the New Orleans news, and you keep teasing like the potential of Moss being a healthy scratch, and all of a sudden Matt Breida being a potential thing. And that's of course later in the day, and who knows when that news drops. But I don't think Pollard's going to be as heavily owned as you think.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. because it's our bubble, right? And then we're all
Mhm.
trying to galaxy brain it, and maybe we're just like trying to be too clever and too smart.
But but so many players beyond Mike Williams. I'm going to use Mike Williams as the most recent example. Like Mike Williams is also our bubble, and then he wasn't our bubble because everyone thumbnails him making a wide open mouth and like it's game over. Everyone then plays him. So I don't know. I don't think so, man. I really think Tony Pollard is one of the most popular plays tomorrow.
Well, I guess we'll see.
I could be wrong. I very well could be wrong.
We're moving on, right? I feel like we kind of like basically talked about the Dallas offense without actually saying Dak, but like, Dak's a good play.
Yeah. You know, like,
yeah.
If you want to play Dak, play double stack him. If not, don't play him at all. Play the running attack.
It's week 12. I would think at this point, like people know, like Dak was bad last week. It's fine. He should be okay.
We can't tell you.
He was bad last week. You can't play him.
Yeah, that's the take you want.
2 of the past 3 games have been bad. Don't play him. He's
unplayable. So that's a good segue into the Buffalo New Orleans game. 45.5 is the total in that game. Buffalo's a 6-point favorite. Reeves, forget ownership, forget all that stuff. Do you prefer Allen? Do you prefer Prescott? Who's your preference as far as quarterback?
I prefer Allen of the two, just because like the rate of passing touchdowns the Bills have versus the Cowboys. They're going to keep winging it, and they have a way tougher matchup against the run. I know that the Saints allowed rushing production to the Eagles, but that's a lot different when you're defending for an RPO quarterback. And, you can scheme some things open that you have to count for that. Josh Allen is mobile, but the Bills don't run. Their running game is not built around that. So I don't think the Bills will actually be successful, running the football. I like the idea of not playing any Bills running backs and not really getting cute with it. I mean, this is the Bills running backs average 21.7 collective touches per game. That's 31st in the NFL. And they're going against the run defense that's allowing 3.2 yards per carry to opposing running backs. And they're also 8th in receptions allowed to running backs. I like the idea of if you just sink your teeth into the Bills passing game, because they're going to drop back and throw it, and they're going to not to really take their foot off to the gas. That's what they do. So I love Allen a little bit more. Plus he's run a lot more than Dak has this year. We haven't really had the super leg version of Dak this season. So I definitely prefer Josh Allen. There has been a lot of chatter about the Spencer Brown splits, with the Bills offense. I did some digging because like one of the things that like I kept looking, I was like, well, Spencer Brown's not very good. Like he's not graded high on Pro Football Focus. ESPN's pass block win rate, like he's not very good either. So I'm like, well, what's the hang up here? Like, is there correlation or causation? And it turns out, like you're doing some digging, it's really that the Spencer Brown splits are actually Cody Ford splits, because when Spencer Brown plays, he plays right tackle and Darrell Williams kicks into right guard. And what that does cause when Spencer Brown's out is that Cody Ford has to play right guard, and he is number 3 in the NFL in terms of pressure rate allowed per pass block snap in the NFL. He's been dog walked in all of his games. And when Cody Ford has played, Josh Allen's been pressured on 40% of his dropbacks, as opposed to 28% of his dropbacks elsewhere when Spencer Brown plays. So it's not really that Spencer Brown is coming in and like he's like Anthony Munoz or Jackie Slater at right tackle. It's that it's an addition by subtraction, because they're taking off this lineman that's just getting turnstiled off the field in Cody Ford. So definitely keep your eye on that, because the Saints do have interior pass rushers to kind of disrupt, Allen, if it's a thing where, Spencer Brown can't play because he was on the COVID list last week. But just keep an eye on that as well. But the Saints have struggled against mobile quarterbacks. Taylor Heineke had 40 yards rushing against them. Daniel Jones, 27 yards against them. I don't really count Jalen Hurts, what he did, because what the Eagles are doing scheme wise is very similar to like what the Ravens are doing. So it's really like, it's hard to defend for that, even against good run defenses. So I do like the Bills passing side though here, before I get too long-winded.
Did not expect to get off offensive tackle, a lineman conversation. Spencer Brown, we talked about Tyron Smith coming back for Dallas, an Anthony Munoz reference. Shout out to Jackie Slater. Good stuff for sure. Let's get this take out there, because you referenced it a couple of times there, Daigle. But as far as Moss, we saw Breida getting a bit of a chunk last week. Was kind of a 3-headed monster. Probably not the right term. Just 3 different dudes running the ball. Moss, Singletary, and Breida. Is there chatter that Moss is going to be a healthy scratch? And if he is, like Singletary is still there, Allen's still there. Like he could siphon touchdowns at the goal line. He could throw them as well. Should I be excited about Breida if that's the situation?
Well, it's not only chatter. You should expect Zach Moss to get healthy scratched from what we've heard. And I don't even know if that means to play one of them, but the fact that Zach Moss will be out, and thus they'll split routes and reps and carries between Breida and Devin Singletary, you should prepare for both. It is admittedly easier to lock in, let's say on DraftKings, for instance, 6,200 from Mark Ingram, and then Tony Jones is 4,000. So thus $2,200 savings is easier than locking in Tony Jones at 4K and Matt Breida is 4,800. So you have to make sure you have that excess salary available to late swap. But I think late swapping into this game is still much easier because even if you play one like the Bills defense, let's say, because you want to do that, because we've seen the Saints give Mark Ingram 15 of their 16 targets. Mark Ingram handled 30 of their 37 RB touches as well. They literally don't do anything but give Mark Ingram their touches. If Ingram's ruled out and it would all go to Tony Jones, you can still play Tony Jones with the Bills defense. And so you should probably be prepared to a late swap to that. And so that's kind of what I'm doing right now, especially since Tony Jones is $22,000 cheaper than Ingram. But again, that's why no one else is doing it. So just prepare yourself. That's all I'm saying. Just be ready for it.
Rich, your thoughts as far as the running backs in this game and the potential situations that might play out?
Yeah, I was really hoping that, we would have like Kamara kind of his salary floating in there too. So you could lock that in and we could have done a bunch of late swapping.
We could have done Diggs to Kamara late swap. It would have been so amazing. So amazing.
And then you would have had the out of like if Kamara, ended up playing, you'd have Kamara easy sub 10%. But that's already been taken out of our hands. I did see that Mark Ingram's like petitioning to play because he wants to be the first player to play 18 full games. It expanded the season. So he's like petitioning to be active because he wants to be the first player to do it.
What a thing.
So even if he's active, it might not matter, right? Like he could be kind of like he could dress and be, that's it, and not really play. So
does that count as far as one of the 18? I guess that counts if he's dressing.
He's just not an active. So I mean, I don't know. I saw there was a Saints beat that tweeted it out though. You can go find it. That's like he's petitioning because he wants to play because he missed the bye week, earlier in the season. So he was on the Texans and to play all 18 weeks.
I don't want to ruin my friends that establish the runs like content, but Nick Underhill went on their subscribe show earlier and said Ingram is like literally trying to do that. And the people, his party around him are telling him not to do that. So we'll see what happens.
I remember in Rudy, the movie Rudy, you had to play one play to be officially in the record book. I don't know, based on a true story, Montana said it was a lie, so I'm not really sure if that's true or not. But that's college. But that's what my brain went to for some reason.
It was literally enough to make me think like, maybe I should reserve the 4K for Tony Jones, thinking Mark Ingram, even if he's active, he won't play at all. Maybe he'll play one play and then get benched. So I don't know. There's a lot of game theory here.
Yeah, he can also just be a package player and play like 15 snaps, but are they on the goal line? Are they, we don't know.
Well, we have to know. That's the thing. We need to know beforehand. So.
I would say just by that, like he could end up being active. Plus they have no depth. Like nobody's healthy on the roster. So he could easily be active and not really play. So,
Alex Arma, who's that?
He's a fullback.
Fullback.
Oh yeah. Okay. I know who he is. I've seen it before. I feel like I played him once on a Showdown Slate or something like that.
Sure.
Non-running backs. Who's your favorite non-running back to consider playing on the Saints? And why is it Juwan Johnson? Is it Juwan Johnson?
Is it Juwan Johnson?
I don't know. Maybe.
Question mark?
I'm Ron Burgundy. Reeves, Juwan Johnson, there's no Troutman. He's going to be their tight end, I think. Although I feel like I read this in your article. I don't want to steal it from your article. But was it he hasn't played more than 20 snaps at all this season in any game? Is that correct?
Yeah, he hasn't.
Okay.
He's a transitioned wide receiver. He's still learning to play like actual NFL tight end. He was a collegiate wide receiver. And they do early in the season, they were scheming stuff up for him, like near the red zone. And maybe in the opening game, they actually had like a 4th and 7 and ran like a tight end screen to him. And then he just kind of started losing more ground to Troutman. And then Troutman started to be really hyper involved. I mean, Troutman, the last month has 18% of the team targets. Like they're not going to give these two guys 18% of the targets. Like those have to go somewhere. Because Nick Vannett and Juwan Johnson they're just not going to demand that kind of, we talk about this with the Raiders, right? Like the targets are earned. When you're the best
who's
players
earned them on the Saints?
No, Traquan Smith and I guess Marquez Callaway, like they're the best players. And that's why Mark Ingram was getting targeted because he was one of the best players. They could be Tony Jones, but not everything is transitive property when the players aren't good. But I think Juwan Johnson could be like a touchdown or bust guy because early in the season, there was scheming stuff open for him in the red zone and scheming plays to him in the red zone. Even that game against Seattle on Monday night, that last play that Winston took the sack on before they kicked the game-winning field goal, that play was to Juwan Johnson. It was a tight end screen on the third down play call. But Winston, he just ate it. He didn't throw it. So, I mean, they have scheme stuff open for him in the red zone because he's that type of dude. I mean, he's huge. He's a monster. Just not real nuanced. So he's not playing a lot in the snap. So even if he's out there, I think Nick Vannett is still going to play a lot too, especially in the run game. So I think from a snap perspective, Nick Vannett will be out there. Nick Vannett's never done anything in his career, so I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what
he's right here. He's watching, and he's
I'm sorry, Nick. I'm sorry,
The
Nick.
Vannett family, we apologize.
Yeah, apologize. But I mean, the Saints, it's tough because the Bills' pass defense has been legit. Even last week when Jonathan Taylor was romping yards, anytime Wentz passed that game, he was terrible. Like Wentz was bad in that game throwing the football. They clamped Michael Pittman on his, small allotment of targets. The Colts only had to throw 20 times. But even if you say like, oh yeah, the Bills look at their schedule, it's all cooked into their stats. What do we think Trevor Siemian is? Like he fits just the profile of all these guys they beat up on all year. And Trevor Siemian has been just absolutely garbage until the fourth quarter in all of these games. He's completed sub 50% of his passes outside of the fourth quarter in all these games. That's why they're chasing so many points because he's been terrible. I don't know how long he holds on the job. Could he even not finish the game? There's all these elements in play, but I do think the Bills' pass defense is legit. I mean, for this particular matchup, because what do the Saints actually have on their side to like kind of combat this defense with? It
goes beyond this matchup. Like the Bills' defense is legit. The Bills' offense has a lot to question. I have so many questions about the Bills' offense, but yeah, defense legit.
Yeah, and if you are going to throw darts on a 3-game slate, like Traquan Smith's not the worst. He's the guy that can get loose for a 60 or 70 yarder. Again, if you're running in massive tournaments, big old tournaments, shooting for the million, I think Traquan's got to be in your pool. Like Callaway's got to be in your pool. Understand the floor is really, really low.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, feel free to give thoughts on that, Reeves, and let's jump over to the Bills. And again, like, do we have to tell people that Diggs is a good play? Like, of course, Diggs is a good play. Manny Sanders, has been sputtering. Beasley's been sputtering as well too. Yeah. Well, as far as the pass catchers on Buffalo, who is most appealing to you? I suppose it's Diggs, but he's most expensive as well.
Yeah, I mean it's easily Diggs because when you look at the Buffalo's man zone splits, so against man coverage, Stephon Diggs has 33 targets. The next closest player has 13 on the Bills. So when they face zone coverage, it's much tighter. Cole Beasley actually leads them in targets, and then Diggs has 1 fewer, than Emmanuel Sanders has 9 fewer. So it's a lot more condensed, right? When it's zone coverage. But when Josh Allen is seeing man coverage and man coverage looks, I mean, he's peppering Diggs. It's almost a death wish to want to guard a guy like Diggs at man coverage. The Patriots tried it last year on Monday night with J.C. Jackson, and he got absolutely just crushed the entire game. But, the Saints might say, like, yeah, we have we perceive to be a shutdown cornerback, and Marshawn Lattimore's played good. But it's a bad matchup for Marshawn Lattimore because it's not a guy like Mike Evans, and no disrespect to Mike Evans, who's going to be on a Hall of Fame trajectory. He's on a Hall of Fame trajectory. But, like, Diggs runs, like, every single route in the route tree. Like, he does so many different things. And he's such a tough guard in one-on-one coverage compared to some of these guys that are clashers and vertical guys. Like it's tough to ask him to combat him, so, I mean, if they're just going to line up Marshawn Lattimore on him, I mean, it could be a huge game for Diggs because he's absolutely just smoked man coverage. And anytime that teams have been in man coverage, Josh Allen is just highlighted attacking, going to my foxhole guy. I'm going to the honey hole, man, every time.
John, what do you have to add there as far as that Buffalo pass game? Are you basically same sort of a thought process? Oh, John walked away on us.
Fair enough.
We're going to power on through. Do you have a final thought as far as the Thanksgiving slate? And then we'll talk about the main slate briefly as well. Knock out our favorite players position by position for the Sunday 10 gamer. Final thoughts as far as the 3-game turkey slate.
Well, just know what you're playing. I think a lot of people want to go access and go overboard on this slate, and they want to try to account for everything happening. And that just makes your lineups worse, right? Like you want to try to get like exposure to every player or like galaxy brain, like could this guy score a touchdown? Know what slates you're signing up for, know what games you're signing for, and build your lineups accordingly around that. You don't have to account for everything. It's going to get you in trouble and you're not going to win any money.
John, I believe you're back with us. Final thought as far as the Thursday slate. Who's the one player that you could for sure say is going to be in the $1 million winning lineup this weekend on Thursday?
I think everyone hates Zeke so much, even though he's the better play. And we've seen this the last couple weeks. If you play the tournament plays over the cash plays, you're wrong. I think Zeke is the best play on the Thanksgiving slate, honestly.
Rich, same question.
Yeah, I like Zeke. I like Diggs at the top dollar price. I'd say mid tier. I mean, it's tough not to really like Mooney. With Robinson out in the matchup that he particularly has, especially to combat David Montgomery's high ownership, who also has a great matchup.
Give me your most. Go ahead,
Rich. How are you handling Mooney in the first game? That's all I'm curious about, because like we know he's going to be over like rostered, but we just don't know really like do we put him with Bears defense? Do we put him with DeAndre Swift? What are you doing, honestly?
Well, I mean, the way I play in a lot of these really small fields, even like I said, like in like literally hundreds of entries, like not even thousands, not even like 2K.
That's what I do. Yeah.
And so I'm really using the Bears game early to do like my one-offs and see if like I can hit on like the Marquise Goodwins and the Josh Reynolds and the TJ Hawks. Like I want to see if I can hit those and then just adjust accordingly for the later games. So if I do play Mooney, it'll probably just be solo Mooney. And that's it, just to combat David Montgomery. I'm probably going to come in under on David Montgomery though, and really kind of just load up on Ezekiel Elliott. And like I said, I think I'm going to probably just try to, if I do play the Cowboys game, which I will, on those really small condensed slates, I'm going to onslaught it. So I'll play Zeke and Josh Jacobs probably. And like, I'll play like just every player in that game and, see if I can win my money that way.
Good strategy. I like that. Just play the results from there and build up your lineups accordingly. All right, let's talk about the 10-game main slate briefly, position by position. Let's start at quarterback. Daigle. We got Tom Brady in a dome against Indianapolis. Hurts at an absolute smash game last time out. We got Herbert in Denver, Wentz on the other side of that Tampa Bay game. Who is popping for you on a Wednesday night when it comes to quarterbacks on the main slate this week?
I want to hear Reeves talk about Tom Brady because I don't know. I really like he's awesome, but it also comes down to ownership. So I don't want to play that game. I'm going to rather talk about Kirk Cousins because I think he's an awesome play. The last 4 games for the Vikings, we've seen them push their opponents to 37 pass attempts per game because Kirk Cousins has been more aggressive. And now we get what has been a good 49ers offense averaging 10 yards per attempt from a clean pocket because they have increased their rate of shotgun. So Jimmy Garoppolo, for instance, 25th overall the last 4 games from shotgun, and now 19th overall. 62% of their plays have come from shotgun because like they realize their offensive line is injured and not as effective. So yeah, I actually like the Vikings to push the 49ers defense, which no team has done. And it's very easy to fit in like the 49ers running backs, right? Like if Elijah Mitchell's healthy, just play Elijah Mitchell. If he's out, Garoppolo missed Jeff Wilson for a wide open touchdown in the end zone on their first drive last game. Play Jeff Wilson. No big deal. But Kirk Cousins like double stacks and the 49ers play more man coverage. We know we can trust Justin Jefferson over Adam Thielen in man coverage. It seems like more trustful than anything else. So I like Kirk Cousins. I like this game over a lot.
Rich?
Yeah, listen, it's been riding all year. Like the Cousins, Jefferson, like the ceiling's been there kind of all season. People try to talk themselves out of Kirk Cousins more and talk him into him, but he's been awesome all year. I mean, he did his 2 interceptions, 21 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Also on the 49ers side, it'll be interesting because now the Vikings are going to be down 3 starting defensive linemen for this game. Danielle Hunter's obviously been out, Michael Pierce out, Dalvin Tomlinson on COVID. So an already bad run defense is going to be down, basically another run stopper. So the 49ers will definitely acquiesce and run on them when they can. One of the reasons I was trying to talk people out of Jeff Wilson last week, and he should have gotten there, he was wide open on that touchdown, was how good the Jaguars run defense has been all year. And, kind of saying like, hey, it's could set up to be a really inefficient Jeff Wilson game because the 49ers backs don't catch the football. But he was so cheap. I mean, I get it. It was hard to fade. But it ended up happening. Like, he didn't get there for a lot of people. We had 2 weeks ago, all the chalk hit. And then last week, Jeff Wilson wasn't that good. Gaskin was good. He got that late touchdown. And AJ Dillon he was just all right. So I mean, so whoever plays though for the 49ers is a good play, like Daigle said. I like that game as well. All the touchdown regressions coming for George Kittle. You love to see it. Brandon Ayuk's playing like a lot of snaps now. But like, when Garoppolo misses that throw to Jeff Wilson, this is like why even he's playing
so bad, that pass.
He's playing the best football all season in the past month, but this is like those like singular plays are why like still like people can't get on board, right? Like, you can't miss that throw. You have a 20-yard drive and it's going to end in a perfect play call, right? They practice this play. It works to a T. No one's even in the same stadium as Jeff Wilson on this throw. Like, you could throw this thing left-handed and complete it. And it wasn't even close. He's even pressured.
Throw a pop-up, throw it underhanded. Like, it was ridiculous. It was so bad. It was so tilting for the chalk for sure.
Yeah, man. I mean, but that's why Garoppolo, he's playing great. He's played really good the last month, but this is why, like, he can't get past it, right? Because of those plays. He has a couple of those plays a game where you're just like, that can't happen. Because when they happen at the wrong times, when they're not playing the Jaguars, like in the Super Bowl, when you have Manny Sanders, clearing the defense, you got to hit those, man. You got to hit those throws. But I mean, this is an interesting slate because obviously we have Dak and Josh Allen on Thursday. Lamar's on Sunday night. Mahomes, mercifully, is on bye this week. Just mercifully, the Chiefs are on bye.
Never come back, Kansas City.
Yeah, please. So we just don't have to fall into the vortex. So we have Jalen Hurts is literally a top 2 quarterback on both sites. He's the highest priced quarterback on FanDuel, second highest on DraftKings. You've got this Stafford Rodgers game that I think is very interesting as well. And then we got the Colts, Bucks game kind of in the middle too. And that's an early game. But really the Brady analysis is simple. You have the NFL leader in passing touchdowns versus the team that's allowed the most passing touchdowns in the NFL. That's really kind of where we need to start and finish. They're going to be aggressive and throw the football indoors. If you want to add that on, whatever narrative you need to throw onto it, but I'm just going to stop at most passing touchdowns versus the team that's allowed the most passing touchdowns. I'm also interested to see if like people try to galaxy brain themselves to Jonathan Taylor again, because he was a good play last week. And we talked about like the Derrick Henry versus the Bills and like the opponents that they had. But I wonder if they'll try to run it back and say like, oh, this is going to be the same situation, right? It's the Bucks. Like he's going to be underowned. So let's go in and let's play him to try to chase that a little bit. So I do wonder if we'll see like him kind of be almost overowned in this game and free up some things for Christian McCaffrey at basically the same price.
Is Vita going to play, or we don't know yet?
Is who?
Vita, the lineman, the guy that clogs at the middle.
Oh,
I don't know if he's going to be active or not, but I don't think it matters. Like, listen, Todd Bowles, like, what do you think that they've been doing all week? The Bucks, like, they just like Jonathan Taylor's he just had 5 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Todd Bowles' defense, since he's been in Tampa, he's allowed 300-yard rushers since he's been there. Like, what do you think that defensive room is doing? It's not like Jonathan Taylor's gonna sneak up on him. Like, they're gonna take this as like an emphasis of pride to end this streak that Jonathan Taylor's on. Michael Pittman is way too cheap on FanDuel. Especially if you want like your run back. You can play Brady, Godwin, Gronk's back. You can play Gronk. Evans is dealing with the back issues, so keep tabs on that. But Pittman's a natural run back in that game on both sides, because they're gonna if like every other team that's played the Bucks, they're gonna have to throw the football. So I mean, I do like that side of it as well. I mean, but that's an early game. That's an early stack. You can come in 49er stack in the afternoon, and then you've got this Rams Packers game kind of floating out there too.
Is Tampa going to throw like 8 in the box and say like, all right, Wentz, you beat us? Is that what's going to happen, I assume?
I mean, that's what they do. I mean, they're going to, those linebackers are going to be running a lot of double mug looks. Like they blitz a lot. They send those guys, they send a lot of heat. So, I mean, they're going to be a loaded box. That's just what that's what Todd Bowles does. This is what Todd Bowles, like Todd Bowles isn't changing, this is playing into his hands. A team that wants to run the football and like an elite power back. Todd Bowles wants this. Like, this is what he wants to defend.
So just two more cheapies I want to throw your way. Tyrod Taylor had a nice game last week. He faces the Jets this week, which, a sieve for fantasy points. And then
Well, he
Trevor
was
Lawrence,
bad. He was bad. He ran for 2 touchdowns.
It doesn't matter, man. Scoreboard, right?
Well,
he still has the legs, doesn't he? And it's the Jets. But yeah, he wasn't spectacular. And it was also rough weather if you want to give him a better than doubt, I suppose. But
you have to hope for those legs every week, though, and you can't do that. You just can't do that.
well, he's cheap. He's 5'3" on DK. This
No,
is
I know.
again, this is not necessarily a FanDuel deal. This is a DK thing. Kind of depending on how the salary is, right? It may or may not be. And then Trevor Lawrence has been pretty much bad all season, but he's facing the Falcons. No, just a no. Just a straight no.
No.
Well, you have those 2 games in the middle where you have those 4 teams are so bad. Like, do the 2 movable objects like make each other like okay? Like, because like the Falcons versus a real team are terrible. The Jaguars versus a real team are terrible. The Jets versus a real team are terrible. The Texans versus a real team are terrible. So, but if you put them together against another terrible team, is there something? I don't know. We'll see if that plays out or not.
Are you guys going to be? I know you guys don't like Red Zone. This is why Red Zone's great. You don't have to watch the Falcons or the Jaguars or the Texans.
Oh no, I wanted the pain.
You'll never see them. You will never see
hate
them
yourself
in the red zone.
when you want to
You'll never see the red zone.
I actually think Kyle Pitts is a good play this week.
Oh, well, I mean, there's not a lot of tight ends in the main slate either. We'll talk about that soon enough. Let's talk about running backs. Daigle, fire up some of the running backs you like this week.
Oh, Joe Mixon is still pretty great. We talked about him earlier, but the fact he got 30 carries, his most since 2019, and the fact that we don't know about TJ Watt, Joe Hayden, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and TJ Lattermilk, like it's still quite a banged up Steelers defense we're trying to target players against. So I like Joe Mixon quite a bit, especially since like the last 2 weeks now, we've seen the Bengals top 51% run play rate in the game script. So yeah, I like the Bengals. And then my wild one, I have in my notes, David Johnson. Hear me out here.
No, baby.
Oh, no.
The Jets are permitting 30 backfield touches per game. And we've seen that last week he ran 16 routes to Rex Burkhead's 7. So Rex Burkhead had 18 carries, but averaged 2.2 yards per carry. Whereas David Johnson outscored Rex Burkhead on fewer carries because he had 100% of the team's targets. And so that is I don't know if sexy is the word for it, but it's a game. It's a game that's happening under oxygen within our breaths. And so David Johnson, I think, is not a bad play for trying to save salary. I like David Johnson.
Reeb, see David Johnson and raise him.
You can't.
I can't.
You just hold, that's it?
No, dude, he just smacked the big joker down.
Yeah.
Run the spade check. He just ran the spade check. I got nothing, man. I can't combat David Johnson.
They did lose one of the running backs this week. They did cut I'm losing the name now. Yeah, and now he's the Dolphins. We don't have enough mediocre running backs. We'll take him. Sure, why not? So yeah, that's gonna be fun. Ribs, what do you have for me as far as some running backs this week? We touched on Taylor, obviously.
Yeah, we'll have to watch what's going on with Aaron Jones here now, because he did practice today, but I don't know if he'll exactly play. Because AJ Dillon, like I think people will be upset with the results last week, but I think there was a lot of positives that came from that game. He handled 81% of backfield touches. The Packers were down 23-10 in the third quarter, and Dillon was not scripted out. He was 4th among all running backs in target share last week. Just didn't get in the end zone, but all the peripherals were good, and his price went down, especially on FanDuel. So very interested to see like what happens there. And how people are scared off. Yeah, easily, right? And then the other side of that game, Darrell Henderson coming out of the bye too. I'm really curious to see what happens in this game, because Joe Barry, the Rams defensive coordinator, his last 6 years of his career, he spent with Sean McVay. Like if anyone is going to have like a kind of a pulse on like what to do against this defense or some things that Sean McVay is going to do, like Joe Barry is going to have it. He was with the Redskins when they were in Washington, not the football team, when Sean McVay was the OC there. And then he spent 4 years with the Rams the last 4 years. So I'm very interested. That game has a lot of little wrinkles to it too. You've got the Rams coming off the bye. Odell's seemingly going to be probably more worked in. I mean, this is since Johnny Munt's been hurt, this is an 11 personnel team. So Odell's going to play. Like Ben Skoronak's not going to play 80% of snaps again. Like that ain't going to happen come out of the bye. And like Odell is super cheap on both sites. And like no one's going to want to play him because the Odell experience has been so bad for everybody. But he's really cheap. He's going to play a lot of snaps coming out of the bye. That game is very intriguing for a number of levels. Obviously, you have the Devontae Adams, factor. I know, Dean, you probably didn't run the optimals. I'm assuming Devontae Adams is looking pretty good in some optimals.
I ran the optimals, but I wanted to say, not to step back on David Johnson, but he's actually appearing in some, which is just wild to me.
It's a Wednesday night, man.
Yeah, the optimals are currently on some David Johnson, but woof, yeah, that might be the kind of week we're lining up for. Also, Miles Gaskin.
I usually don't agree with the optimizer, but David Johnson's a good play, so I don't care.
Good play. Gotta double down on that for sure.
Yeah, it's a good play.
James Robinson, CMC, Leonard Fournette, Miles Sanders came back to muck up that.
I like Miles Sanders. Everyone assumes that the workload will get split between Sanders and Scott. Maybe they just ride Sanders. Because remember, he got benched early for a fumble. But maybe they just come back to Sanders for majority of the workload, as they did last week. And if he doesn't fumble, he just handles a majority of the workload. So I do like Sanders because he's very volatile, but he could literally get 25 touches over Boston Scott without Jordan Howard and stay in that range.
And he's a house call guy. We haven't seen it yet this year, but we've seen it over the course of his career. Sanders is he could have a 60-yard touchdown run.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We didn't talk about Cam Newton, by the way. I don't know if that was by intent or by design, but he is, and the price on FanDuel is rough at 8K. It's hard to get to.
Yeah, he's the third high. He's the third highest quarterback there.
It's hard to justify. I mean, if you're playing in the massive tournaments, for sure, I guess you could play him if you want to take a stand. And he is a quarterback that can run for 2 touchdowns. That's in his bag, in the repertoire. And that kind of leads me to CMC. I guess you can always play CMC as well too. Dependent upon his salary, dependent upon how tight or loose the cap may or may not be. But for sure, he's got to be in your pool as well. And as well this week, Reeves, you have a CMC take. If you want to say anything about Cam, by all means, or any running backs before we move on and talk about some receivers.
Yeah, I mean, Christian McCaffrey's pretty good. Cam, it was the same story with Cam last week. When he's operating in offensive leverage, which is why Jalen Hurts has played really well last month too. When you have offensive leverage with these quarterbacks, this is why you maximize their efficiency. Cam Newton on first down plays last week, 8 of 9 passing, 9.9 yards per pass attempt, 2 of his touchdowns. On all other downs, 5.6 yards per pass attempt. So just, staying on script in offense is really huge and vital for Cam Newton. It has been for his entire career. Dolphins have played pretty decent defense the past month, but Joe Flacco still had enough fantasy points to say nah, I don't know. But they're going to blitz Cam's face off. That's what they do. That's what the Dolphins do. They're going to live and die by getting home. So he's tough to play. He said 8K on FanDuel, but fine on DraftKings.
Anything else, Daigle, as far as running backs?
Yeah, I think I'm tapped out David Johnson.
You're just going to put all your chips on David Johnson and see how that turns out.
100%, baby. 100%.
We're going to talking receivers and tight ends in a second. Before we do that, I want to tell you all about the sponsor of the show, Jock Market. Stop throwing your money away. It's time to check out Jock Market, the app where daily fantasy, it becomes a stock exchange. You buy and you sell shares of players in real time for real money. Download now for a 100% deposit match up to $50. Use the promo code GRINDERS, GRINDERS. That's GRINDERS. Get this now. If you do not turn a profit this week, Jock Market, they're going to cover your losses in your very first event. Download Jock Market in the app or Play stores. Check jockmarket.com out. That's JOCKMKT.com. And use the promo code GRINDERS for a 100% deposit match up to $50 on your first deposit. Reeves, give me some receivers.
I said, all right, Pittman, we brought up Odell. Who else is on the board here that we want to look at? I don't know, man. I don't have a David Johnson of wide receivers. I guess Odell's close enough. Odell's is dusty.
No one does.
Cooper Kupp is playing, but people know Cooper Kupp was good. And
play Cooper Kupp.
Yeah,
I like Devontae Adams still in that matchup because Jalen Ramsey's not shadowed this season. I doubt he does.
You touched on Jefferson already we
touched on Jefferson. Who else do we got? What are we doing with Elijah Moore and the Zach Wilson experience returning?
Oh man. I'll turn that. Maybe he's our David Johnson of receivers. I'll turn that over to Daigle.
There is no David Johnson receivers. He's too good to be a David Johnson receiver. Now you could skinny stack Elijah Moore, David Johnson. I have no idea what to do with him. I don't know because Zach Wilson has been bad. I do think the Jets win outright, honestly. But I it depends on Elijah Moore's usage because he was a number 2 receiver this past week. But like, and Corey Davis got injured in practice earlier this week as well. So I just don't know, man. I don't know. I give up. I have no idea.
Fair enough. Is that it for receivers? Is that our receiver talk? For
No.
I mean, Keenan Allen's been on a tear. He's destroying man coverage, which is where the Broncos live.
Well, Mike Williams is also 5,700 on DK. That's pretty cheap. That's so cheap.
Yeah. Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin feels like a really strong play once again in the dome there versus Indianapolis.
Yeah.
If we're playing Toronto, are we pairing him with Brandon Cooks? Any Brandon Cooks?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
All right. I mean,
why the hell not?
We don't know about AJ Brown.
We're onslaughting that game. David Johnson, you brought up Tyrod. Daigle brought up David Johnson. We might as well get every Texan. Let's get all the Texans in the lineups.
Running back with Moore? I don't know.
Yeah, there you go. Ty Johnson. We'll just onslaught this game.
I prefer why the hell not onslaughts as opposed to why not onslaught. So yeah, why the hell not? David Johnson, Brandon Cooks, and whatever else you want to do. Elijah Moore. That's fine.
As far as tight ends, we kind of reference Pitts. Pitts is probably the best raw points tight end this week. A lot of the guys are playing. No, you think it's Goddard? Do you think it is Kittle? Gronk?
Oh, I don't know. There's no good tight ends. I don't care.
Freiermuth's going to be pretty popular.
Yeah, well, Ebron's gone, right? So
yeah,
that'll open it up to some degree.
And he's super cheap because they played on Sunday night.
Let's see. Who's your favorite when you consider salary? Is it Freiermuth?
I mean, salary, yeah. On FanDuel, Dallas Goedert is way underpriced for sure. At 5,900. He's been first in tight ends and target share of the last 3 weeks he's played full games, because he left that one game with a concussion, but probably was going to get a bunch of targets in that game too. The Eagles haven't thrown. Like, you just need them to run into one game or just something to go wrong, whether it be like they give up a defensive touchdown or just they fall behind, because when they have had to throw, Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert are just like, their target shares are insane. If this thing ever opens up, like, those guys are going to break a slate. One of those two guys, if there's a game where like the Eagles actually have to throw it 30 plus times again, Dallas Goedert's getting insane usage for his price on FanDuel for sure.
So I run the optimals, right? Run them before the show. And as always, Wednesday night. So grain of salt and all that, but I cap it at 65%. I don't want any more than 65% of one player, because I want to see the different shuffle of players we get. And 65% of Dallas Goedert pops up on FanDuel, and 60% pops up on DK. Next guy on DK is Jared Cook at 19%. Next guy is Arnold at 8%. Next guy is Gronk at 8%. And on FanDuel, it's Pitts 24%, Arnold at 9%, Kittle at 1%, and Pharaoh Brown at 1%. How does somehow he's Pharaoh Brown stuck in the back door?
Who's got that Pharaoh Brown projection cooking over at RotoGrinders?
Well, I mean, it's one. It's one lineup or two lineups at 200.
No, probably.
I think this is Cardi. So I think it's. I took a peek at this is the Blitz's numbers for what it's worth.
Oh, he's Goddard's 4.8 on DraftKings too. Good God.
Yeah,
he's going to be super popular.
How did he get priced like this? Because Freiermuth's 4.3. Like, how did this happen?
I don't know, man. I'm not responsible for pricing a DK. The algorithm knows all, though. Sometimes it's like, well, this is the wrong price, and all of a sudden it's like, well, turns out, actually.
Because Goddard's the same price as like Noah Fant on FanDuel and Hunter Henry. Like,
it's just wrong.
Yeah, it's just bad. It's a bad price.
Typically you spend up on FanDuel for tight end, but like there's not many guys to spend up on. And
Kelsey's not playing, and Waller's playing on Thursday.
Yeah.
Then that's it. Those are all the good tight ends. Now Kittle's been playing good. Gronk's back. Noah Fant's in a fine matchup, but like he only gets targets like 4 yards downfield.
They're no good tight ends.
Is there a David Johnson of tight ends? So can you do that? Can you give us
Pharaoh Brown? It's Pharaoh Brown. We're onslaughting. A Texan in every segment. A Texan in every segment.
What is
literally Pharaoh Brown is the David Johnson of tight ends. Yes, that's all I got.
I can't imagine rostering Pharaoh Brown. Like, in what world and what planet? I am gonna likely run 150 on Yahoo. I do not anticipate. He's $10 on Yahoo, but he's also Pharaoh Brown, so that's probably.
Devin, how many people are even watching this right now? Still,
I'm not kidding.
I'm watching the replay. The people listen on the, they don't necessarily watch on YouTube. Hey, shout out YouTube. whoever's.
I'm
still
not
with us.
kidding. I'm gonna play David Johnson. Like he's a good DFS play. I don't know.
It might be a good play, like when Sunday actually arrives, like for real. Like again, as of right now, it's looking like at least not completely insane. It sounds more insane than it actually is, I think. But it's Sunday. We'll see how that works out. Give me
David
some
Johnson versus Donovan Peoples-Jones. That's what we're up against right now.
DPJ.
Yeah.
Oh man. So give me some final thoughts as far as you want to give me some final thoughts as far as Thursday, as far as Sunday. We already gave our Thursday final thoughts. Daigle, final thoughts as far as at least how you see it on a Wednesday night. What are your thoughts on the main slate?
Oh goodness gracious.
Besides
Sunday,
David Johnson.
Sunday, David Johnson, Elijah Moore, skinny stack. Everyone's gonna play Tom Brady and Jonathan Taylor, so be different. I think the Kirk Cousins stack with 49ers is very sexy. That's a good game, honestly. And then also let's see what happens with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, because like it may be a GPP Rose statement where you have to roster either one or the other, Keenan Allen or Mike Williams, to make a statement over like Javonte Williams, but you can skinny stack them. So that's my opinion. Here we go. That's my thoughts.
Key Lime in the chat says not playing David Johnson and is a thumb down emoji. It's just not even
Don't
just not
thumb
playing
down.
him.
Don't thumb down David Johnson. It's a good play. Honestly, it's a good play.
What year was that?
He's
Like
been through
2017. What do you have, Reeves? Save this segment here. What do you have?
There's no pulling it back.
There's no going back from David Johnson.
Like, yeah, man, this is full Patrick Swayze, dude. It's ghost.
The DeLorean has gone 88 miles per hour.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we talked about a number of players. We gave food takes. We talked about the Thanksgiving slate. What more could you want on a fantasy football show? I think that this had it all.
Daigle, do you have any Silva Thanksgiving stories you want to?
He's not there anymore.
Oh, wait, Silva's not, or we lost Daigle. He's walked away.
Both. Both. You clearly heard me slaughter my words. Like, don't come.
Where
back.
are you right now?
I am 10 minutes from my parents in the woods because they don't have internet at their house, so I can't record at their house. So I'm at a hotel nearby them. And what's the question, Dean? What do you?
No worries. You're good. Wait, just
try to get.
I'm going to ask you next week. We'll save this episode for a cliffhanger. Tune in for part 2.
Daigle hasn't had his eyes open in 35 minutes,
bro.
I haven't been watching the video.
Everyone calm down.
Make sure you guys watch this on YouTube. It's probably more entertaining that way. All right. We do appreciate everybody hanging with us. Again, if have yourself a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the holidays. Hopefully we set you guys up.
Hydrate, Daigle.
Yes, Daigle. Hydrate. We're looking forward to having you come back next week. It'll be good times for sure. Do not, or at least consider playing David Johnson on a Sunday. That was Rich Hribar.
Hey, David Johnson's actually a good play. He's a good play. He really is.
When you send out the tweet tomorrow, like you always give like the highlights of the show, make sure you stress David Johnson somewhere in the tweets.
Well,
Lots of David Johnson talk.
Everyone's gonna hate me, but yeah, I'll stress it.
That was John Daigle from NBC Sports. A good football show podcast. Check that out as well. Rich Hribar.
But I'm not like this, so don't check it out when I'm like this. But yeah,
you're fine.
I'm good.
Yeah, I listened to. I remember last week I said, "Hey, you're actually really good." I remember how you said it. It was like so condescending.
Gene recognized I'm good sometimes, so yeah, check it out.
It just came out wrong. It was not the way I intended it to. All right, that's Rich Hribar from Chart Football Analysis as well. You can check out his game-by-game analysis as well too. That's free for the first 3 games, the Thursday slate. You have a small window. You have the next 10 hours or so, give or take. Give that a look.
It's great. Check it out.
It's good content for sure. Rich, you got anything for the people before we step aside and get out of here?
No, have a great Thanksgiving. If you listen to this on Friday, I hope you had a good holiday. I hope you scored whatever Black Friday item you were hunting for.
Imagine leaving the house and putting on pants and
fighting. Well, no, you just do it online. Everything's online, man.
Yeah, I mean that's come on. People are still fighting in Best Buy.
I still don't have a PS5.
Yeah, I want to get one of those too. I've heard good things. I have the PS4. It feels so old school. All right, that was Rich Hribar. That was John Daigle. That was Devin producing. We do appreciate y'all hanging with us. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. Be safe. We're out of here. Holler.